Currently, there's a new game trend on Roblox. I know, very surprising. And this new wave of games are simply titled battleground games. Battleground games have been coming to Roblox left and right, and most of them follow a certain theme. These themes are almost always different animes. And the game we'll be covering today is one of those games, except it feels the most unique out of all the games I've played. That game being Jujutsu Shenanigans. On the surface, Jujutsu Shenanigans doesn't look special at all. It's a battlegrounds game that uses characters and abilities from Jujutsu Kaisen. And in the game's description, it literally states that it's using other games' mechanics, one of these games being Combat Mayhem. Combat Mayhem was unique in the sense that it had destruction physics. That means whenever a player used a move, the ground around them would break. Jujutsu Shenanigans took this idea and cranked it up by 1,000. When you battle in this game, expect to be crushed by buildings that'll completely ruin any combo you try to use. But I'll get more into that when I talk about the gameplay. For now, let's talk about the history of this game. The experience for Jujutsu Shenanigans was released on April 16th, 2022, but the game would not be fully done until years later. As stated before, this game falls into a large category of battlegrounds games. These games have you battle a ton of other players on a pretty empty map, one of the more well-known examples being the strongest battlegrounds. But a lot of players that like this genre of games are now playing Jujutsu Shenanigans. Why that is, I want to find out. Now, let's cover all the characters. At the time of this video, there are 4 characters, 5 if you count Mahito, but he's currently unfinished. But let's talk about these characters in more detail, starting with Jujutsu Kaisen's glorious blue-eyed king, Gojo. Gojo is probably the most beginner-friendly character. His combos are pretty easy to pull off and he does a lot of damage. His Lapse Blue pulls enemies in and launches them in the air. If you use a special attack while using Lapse Blue, you can teleport to the enemy mid-air and land an extra attack. Gojo's next move, Reversal Red, can shoot a slow projectile that blows up when it either connects with something or travels too far. I usually use this move when I finish Lapse Blue. That's because you can follow up with twofold kicks. These kicks are one of my favorite moves in the game, only because it's super satisfying to land. It does decent damage, but you can use it on ragdoll enemies. This means it can be used as a combo extender. Gojo's other move, Rapid Punches, is another great move overall. Gojo is one of the characters that can cause the most destruction. This means that he's incredibly fun to use. But another fun mechanic in this game is character ults. Gojo's ult is no exception. Lapse Blue Max is a giant ball of pure destruction. It destroys everything in its path and does massive damage to enemy players. It also has little wind up and does some of the most damage in the game. If you combine that with Gojo's other move, Reversal Red Max, you can nuke most of the damn map. But Gojo's last 2 moves are the real stars of the show. Hollow Purple is a move with a long ass animation, but it does tons of damage. Sometimes you'll just randomly get hit with this, and if you're the one using it, you can level buildings. But the ability a lot of Jujutsu Kaisen fans are waiting for is domain expansions. Domain expansions are basically the trump cards of each character. If you pop a domain, you're basically guaranteed the win, with the exception of one character. But I'll talk about that character in just a moment. Gojo's domain literally makes everyone else inside brain dead. This allows you to murder everyone. I just realized how long it took to just talk about Gojo, so how about we just speed things up a little. You can make arguments for who the best character is. In my opinion, it's Yuji, and by a mile. Yuji really only has one combo, but this combo destroys most of your health, and it's all because of his main move, Curse Strikes. Oh, and don't even get me started on Manji Kick. Manji Kick can counter a large majority of things in this game, but since I'm bad at the game, I can never land it. Anyways, moving on to Sukuna. The King of Curses is Yuji's ult, and he's probably the biggest instant win button in the game. His M1s alone can stun you to death. Dismantle does way too much damage, Fuga kinda sucks, and Rush is super funny to use. But using Sukuna's domain and getting a ton of people inside is just the best feeling ever. Overall, Yuji is a really good rushdown character that requires the player to always be on the offensive. Our next character, Hakari, is probably the most unique character in the game, and it's because it's about gambling.
Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it!
Hakari was the character I had the most trouble using, and a lot of players can probably relate to this. I'd describe him as a great character in a game full of amazing ones. He just suffers compared to characters like Gojo or Yuji. He can still be used, but you'll need to put in more effort to make them work. And that's because Hakari's moves are all super hard to land. Oh, and don't even get me started on his ult. This is where Hakari's gambling aspect comes into play. The domain provides zero benefits to the user besides being a safe shield to all outside players. But inside the domain, it's up to you to stall out your enemies and help you get a jackpot. In Hakari's domain, there'll be two scenarios. Both of those scenarios involve a dummy having to make it to a certain checkpoint. If the dummy fails, you will not get the jackpot, but if the dummy succeeds, you'll earn this jackpot. But after 3 fails, you'll get a guaranteed one. The jackpot is where Hakari shines. He gets 4 new moves, all dealing huge amounts of damage, and if you dance, your speed will increase. But when you take damage, you regenerate at a much higher rate. If you land a non-pity jackpot, you'll be in this form for 1 minute and 40 seconds. But if you earn the pity jackpot, you'll only be in this form for 50 seconds. Whew, holy, that was a lot of info dumping. Sorry about that. Hopefully you can see the issues I and many others have with Hakari. The previous 2 characters I talked about have a ton of pros and only 1 or 2 cons, but Hakari is a mixed bag. But still, he's a fun character, just that his domain doesn't provide many benefits to himself. But let's just move on to the bum himself, Megumi.
Sword. Divergency, the Divine General. Maharaga.
Megumi is probably the biggest zoner in the game. While playing Megumi, unless you're using a combo, getting close to your opponent is usually a bad idea. His moves get cancelled out very easily, so it's not recommended to waddle up to someone and use a frog right in front of them. But if you do zone correctly, Megumi is definitely a contender for the most annoying character to fight. Just spam moves one after the other, dealing a ton of damage. But what makes this bump so special is his ult. When you enter it, he's the only character in the game not to have a domain, so you don't really have a trump card. That is unless you successfully use the Divine General himself, Maharaga. Summoning him can be a challenge, because if you're hit once, the process cancels. But if you summon him successfully, you have access to one of the strongest characters in the game. Maharaga has 300 HP, but also a ritual bar that slowly ticks down. When you hit a person, that bar will go back up, so you need to be fighting at all times or else you die. Maharaga has 3 different modes. These 3 modes change his 4th move, the first move being Takedown. Takedown will teleport you towards a player and land a surprise attack. You know, except it never lands, so it's bad. The next move, Adaption, will allow the player to take less damage to attacks. To do this though, you'll need to tank hits when a move is active. And in my opinion, using the skill is kinda useless when you can just use his 3rd move, World Slash. World Slash is a long windup but does a ton of damage if landed. And since these moves all share 1 cooldown, using only World Slash is the way to go since it's leagues better than the other 2 moves. But overall, Maharaga is a super fun character that can cause so much destruction, and the entire lobby will usually try to jump you, so it really feels like you're some sort of boss fight. But let's move on to the last character on the list, Mahito. Mahito, as of now, is not complete. He only has 2 moves in his ult, but does have 4 moves in his normal form. So let's quickly go over them. Mahito has access to 2 goofy hammers, 1 goofy hammer, finger guns, glow punch, and finally, a big ass worm. Mahito also has access to 3 different arm types. These arms allow him to perform alternate dashes. Blade arms will make so you dash forward at really fast speeds, while the big ball arms spin you around doing area damage, but very slowly. But when you enter Mahito's ult, this is where things start to get interesting. Mahito's first move, Idle Transfiguration, requires the player to use the skill twice. After the second use, the enemy will be insta-killed. But Mahito's domain expansion, Self-Embodiment of Perfection, is just pure chaos. And with that, that's all the characters currently in the game. So how about we move on to why I believe this game is so unique. As I stated a lot in this video, the pure chaos of this game is what makes it special. Not a lot of battleground games are like this. This game is not meant to be taken seriously. Its entire purpose is for it to be a big joke. Of course the game has people who sweat and will be toxic, but you can just pull a classic Jujutsu Kaisen and jump people, although this can also happen to you. So this game is actually the worst thing on earth and you should not play it. Another reason I find this game unique is the map. Instead of being a barren wasteland, the game takes place in a city. It's perfect for causing as much destruction as possible. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but as I stated earlier, destruction can make or break a 1v1. and I believe that's the most important reason this game is fun. It really shouldn't be taken seriously at all. Spending hours perfecting a combo or training your ass off on one specific character is not the intended way to play. Simply getting on the game and messing around with your friends is probably the most fun you'll have. And I see a lot of people getting mad that other individuals treat this game more like a hangout game rather than a fighting one. But I personally don't see an issue with that. If you want to play a serious fighting game, go play the strongest battleground. That game takes itself 100 times more seriously, but if you're just looking for a fun game you and your friends can mess around on, this game is perfect for you. Before we end things, let's go through all the reasons you should play this game. Hopefully going through all the characters and mechanics at least made it so that a couple people will check this game out. But for the last bit of you who are still on the fence about this game, let's quickly go through all of the reasons. This game has some of the best character designs, each character works off the others very well, and none feel too overpowered and obnoxious. The map for this game is perfect, everything can be destroyed, making everything feel super interactable. And lastly, this game isn't to be taken seriously at all. At the end of the day, this game is clearly all one big joke and should be treated as such, so there's no reason to be practicing your stupid and obnoxious Yuji combos. So if any of these reasons sound interesting to you, please check out this game. It seems to be at its peak popularity currently, so now is the best time to try it out. Also, this game updates incredibly frequently, so expect this video to become outdated in literally a month. But with that, let's move on to my final thoughts. Jujutsu Shenanigans is the best battlegrounds game in terms of pure enjoyment. It may not look as flashy as something like the strongest battlegrounds, but in my opinion it's more enjoyable. The game looks pretty bad on the surface, but if you're willing to give it a shot, you'll quickly realize why this game is special to a lot of people. So what are you waiting for? Go and give this game the attention it deserves. Do it before they add something stupid like Sans. Anyway, that's all for me. I'll see you guys in the next one.